lesson is Luke chapter 21, verses 5 through 19. The temple's fate. Some people were talking about the temple, how it was decorated with beautiful stones and ornaments dedicated to God. Jesus said, "As for the things you are admiring, the time is coming when not even one stone will be left upon another. All will be demolished." They asked him, "Teacher, when will these things happen? What sign will show that these things are about to happen?" Jesus said, "Watch out that you aren't deceived. Many will come in my name saying, 'I'm the one,' and it's time. Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and rebellions, don't be alarmed. These things must happen first, but the end won't happen immediately." Then Jesus said to them, "Nations and kingdoms will fight against each other. There will be great earthquakes and wide-scale food shortages and epidemics. There will also be terrifying sights and great signs in the sky. But before all this occurs, they will take you into custody and harass you because of your faith. They will hand you over to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will provide you with an opportunity to testify. Make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance. I'll give you words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to counter or contradict. You will be betrayed by your parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends. They will execute some of you. Everyone will hate you because of my name. Still, not a hair on your heads will be lost. By holding fast, you will gain your lives." And this ends the reading of the gospel.
You know, I spent a lot of time up here talking how wonderful our technology is, especially this thing. How can I carry a computer that's like 50 or 100 times bigger than the first computer in my pocket? And then those Google goggles, Google Glass, unbelievable. And yet, when I said this to Christ, he says, "You think these are great? Try this. Drop your cell phone in your coffee," which I did. And it kind of sputtered a little and had a mental breakdown. Somebody said I should keep it put it in rice, but you know that rice would be awful messy in my pocket. I went online to find out what my insurance would do for it. I pay every month, pay insurance. It has a $200 deductible. And I tried to trade this phone in on a new one, and it was worth $1.80. And so over the time, it's gotten over its psychotic condition, and it almost works perfectly again. So we're going to live with it for a while more, but Christ was telling me just what he told the people at the temple. They were saying, "Oh, look at how beautiful. This will go on forever." And Jesus says, "Don't count on it." Things go wrong. Last night, after I had the sermon all ready, I was playing on the internet, and I came across this video talking about the great economic collapse that's going to happen sooner than you think. It's going to be worse than the downturn of 2008, 2009. It is going to be worse than the Depression. It's going to be a complete global collapse of the dollar. And that's going to lead to huge inflation and terrible poverty, and your world is going to change like you never imagined. And the guy was trying to, in the short version, he's just trying to sell me gold. You ever see those, hear those on the radio where they're talking about how terrible? They've been doing this a long time. I remember something called the Rough House, how to face the rough times that are coming. Oh, that must have been 40 years ago. Yeah, maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. And Jesus says, it is, in a way. But, Jesus said, first of all, do not be deceived. Back in the 1800s, Howard Miller was convinced a lot of people that the Great Atonement was going to happen sometime in 1842 or 1843. And when 1844 came along, the Great Atonement became the Great Disappointment. Most of the followers went someplace else. And the faithful stuck around, and they formed the Seventh-day Adventist Church out of the Great Disappointment. Don't be deceived. Back in 1970, Hal Lindsey wrote a book called The Late Great Planet Earth, which starts out with the guy driving down the freeway in California, and suddenly these cars go veering off every which way. The drivers have left in the rapture, and it's wonderful. I think it'd be terribly scary. Don't believe all you hear. And more recently, the Left Behind guys, Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins, have made quite a profit off their prophecy, fictitious as it might be. Don't be deceived. The news media loves to tell you what bad things are about to happen. I've noticed they don't report the news as much as they tell you what's going to happen. And it's never good. You know why? Because there's nothing you can do about it. And then comes on the commercial and it shows you a new car. You might get a new car. Or it shows you a new laundry something or other. You might get that. Or at the very least, you can get a new haircut. And at least you do something. Jesus says, do not be deceived. And he tells us that something is going to happen. But he does not tell us to just make us worry. He tells us so that we can have our eyes open and we can know where to look in the midst of it. Now this memo a lot of people haven't received. They haven't read it. Jesus did not tell us to wring our hands and to wait with bated breath for the other apocalyptic shoe to fall. He is telling this so that we will be aware and ready. Because nobody knows the hour of his coming. The world is churning and groaning from the weight of sin, and it only gets worse until he arrives. That's true cosmologically, and that is certainly true personally. Have you noticed that? When Christ isn't there, it just gets worse and worse and worse. But he will come. The second thing Jesus said was, adversity sets the stage for good. You will be called upon to be an anchor or a beacon of hope among hopeless people. We see that even today. How many times have you gone to the coffee shop or sat around the table with somebody and you started talking about how terrible the things are? President, Congress, Supreme Court, local, national, worldwide. And we just go on about how it's all falling apart and how these people aren't doing their job. And we get all tense because we can't figure out how to solve it, don't know what to do. Well, there's one thing we can do. And that's when you hear this, you say, absolutely, God is in charge. And in the end, God is in control. God is good. All the time. Somebody said that. I'd like to hear that. When somebody starts talking about, John, about bad politics, I'll be bipartisan on this. We all do it. But God is in charge. And God is good. And the only response to that is all the time. Keep focused on it. And show that focus in where you go and how you live. Because the third thing Jesus says here, that adversity and struggle will not ultimately win. He says, not a hair on your head will perish. And through it all, your endurance will gain you everlasting life. We are called through it all to endure. You know, Wednesday, we've got 2 great Bible studies here. I've been privileged to get to both of them and share in those. And the genius and spiritual counsel going on among the members of the study is marvelous, both studies. On Wednesday night, we are studying, we had the biggest turnout ever last Wednesday, didn't we? And we may have to move in here to do our study. We were studying Paul's letter to the Romans, and we came to the part where Paul says, suffering creates... Anybody? Endurance, yes. And endurance builds character. And character builds hope. And hope never fails. Get that in our heads. In the midst of the great economic collapse, in the midst of the great governmental bungle that's going on right now, in the great world problems that may come down upon our heads, hope never fails. We have a unique faith, a unique religion, because Jesus took suffering. He suffered from Gethsemane to Golgotha. He died. And he rose again. So that we are the only faith, the only religion, the only God who takes suffering and sanctifies it, who makes suffering holy. Now, that does not mean we ought to go out and be masochists and try to bring in more suffering in our lives. It means we need to go out and take care of those who are suffering. And we also need to be ready when it happens to us. It may be a great turmoil that everybody's caught up in. It may be your own personal turmoil when a job falls through, or the doctor has bad news, or somebody very, very dear to you is gone. But through it all, we have hope because we've all looked at the last chapter. I always tease Sherry because whenever she reads a mystery, she goes right to the end and then she backs up to try to figure out why it turned out that way. No, the writer put it all in one direction for a reason. But on the Bible, it's a good idea to skip to the last chapter and find out the truth. The truth. God wins. Let's say that all together. God wins. And those who have Jesus Christ in their heart, or who know they have Jesus Christ in their heart, who live for God, who are centered on God, are looking past the disasters and all the struggles and all the problems and see only God at work in the whole of eternity. Well, we reap God's victory too. Yes, the earth is on fire. It's going on and on and on. One problem after another, and maybe getting worse. But we know through Jesus Christ how to live while the earth is on fire. We live for God, in whose name we give thanks.